Hey guys, this is Neil with Catalyst Machine Works, and this is the video tutorial for the waterproofing upgrade for our Whoopmaster 4-inch. Okay, this is going to be a step-by-step procedure that we're going to put on video to explain how to build this thing up properly. Now, this particular build where you're trying to waterproof this machine is technically challenging. Okay, it's for an experienced builder. If this is your first quad, you know, maybe you shouldn't be tackling something like this, but if you've got some builds under your belt, you're probably capable of accomplishing this. All right, so if you have any questions after watching this video, feel free to contact us and we'll help you out. But let's go ahead and get started. So these are the major components for the waterproofing upgrade. This one right here, this is a receiver box, so this is a separate purchase. If you want to put your receiver in a waterproof enclosure and not inside of this main enclosure, then you can buy this little waterproof box. Okay, and it's basically comprised of a plastic enclosure, and then it's got this little soft TPU gasket, and then it's got a carbon fiber lid. Okay, and we'll explain how that works later, so I'm going to get that out of the way. And then the waterproof upgrade itself is here. You can see the various pieces. So you've got these heat sinks. So this heat sink attaches to the stack, so your ESC connects into here, and then you've got a heat sink for the Vista, and then you've got this skirt. All right, and so basically it's pretty simple. The way that it works is that this skirt is compressed onto this lip here, and it joins it to that, and then you also have this piece that has a similar lip that fits on top of this, and then it closes the entire thing up. All right, so this is a build that we've got going on in progress right here, and we're going to go ahead and use this as an example to get the build started. And so I'm going to hand the reins over to Gerson. He's our builder and pro badass, and he's going to help us out with this build today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. As you can see, Gerson has already performed some of these steps, and so he is going to sort of backtrack and explain what he's done thus far. I do want to mention that this build video is not for the frame, right? So I have a separate video that details how to assemble this frame. We are just going to focus on the waterproof components and how those all go together with the electronics and the frame. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hand it over to Gerson, and he's going to explain the steps that he's done so far.
Alright guys, well, after you've assembled your arms to your body, the bottom plate, obviously you're going to fix the bottom heatsink to your bottom plate as well, which is actually the top plate. You want to put in your 25mm nylon screws, stack screws. Once you do that, you're going to go ahead and seal around the screws with silicone, and you're going to put in a 3mm standoff, and that'll make it nice and watertight. Alright guys, so it's been about 30 minutes. You have to let your silicone dry before you can move on to the next step, or else these are going to push through and you're going to ruin the seal. So you want to let it dry. We're going to talk about waterproofing the motor wire pass-through. These are TPU little grommets. They are one-sided. One side is taller than the other. The shorter side, it's going to be towards the bottom, and it does require a little bit of heat. You want to use a heat gun to press them in one at a time, or you can just mess up your fingers and try and push them in as hard as you can. Whatever works for you. What I do recommend is to run your wires through, like I have here, and put your ESC on. Measure your wires, how you're going to cut them once you're getting ready to solder. I have my ESC here already prepped. I found that if you put your lead wires facing up, it's going to help a lot towards the routing of everything inside. It's very compact inside. Also, you want to use some kind of a thermal paste or like we have used here, these are thermal pads, usually used on graphics computers, graphics cards for computers. These are 2 millimeters thick, and they will help to transfer some of this heat down into the bottom heatsink. That's what this is for. So that's why you're going to use a 3 millimeter stack. Will give you enough space to clear your ESC, and this will touch the bottom. Alright guys, on this next step I'm going to be soldering up the ESC. You want to put it in dry, and you want to put in two screws, 2 nylon screws with a 5 millimeter standoff, one on each corner to hold down your ESC, and that'll also compress the silicone pad or grease that you put at the bottom, the thermal grease. After you measured out your wires, how you want to get them cut, just get to soldering up. So I do want to say that we opted on a 330 UF capacitor. You can use a little bit larger one, up to 470, but you will have to pretty much solder all the way to the edge, because the visa will sit right on top and you don't want any kind of interference with that. Once you've soldered up your wires to your ESC, you're pretty much done with this part, and you'll be able to seal up your motor cables. You can either use silicone or conformal coating. I've already went ahead and sealed mine up, but I do recommend you wait till after you've already soldered up your wires, because if you're pulling and tugging, it might break the seal, and you'll have to do it all over again. Alright, so also this is an Icon 50 amp ESC. It's really large. It barely fits in there, so you have to kind of route your wires around like so. I try to do it through here just straight, and that's a no-go. It's not going to look pretty at all. So you kind of want to do it the old racer way, just kind of wrap it around the stacks and come down, and that way you can solder them up nice and clean. We do also have another option. It's the 35 amp Icon ESC, and this is much smaller. Hold on, let me get this in here. It's much smaller than the 55 amp, as you can see. So you have a ton of room right here, and you can cut your wires just straight, and it'll give it a nice clean look as well.
Guys, another thing I want to mention about the ESCs that you're going to choose to use with this bird and this waterproof option is you need to be aware that there's only so much space inside of this enclosure to fit your ESC. You can see this is a Icon 50 amp, like Gerson was discussing earlier, and this is about the biggest that you're going to be able to fit in here. You can see how close the motor pins are, or the motor pads are, to the edges of this part. Okay, so I'm going to get on CAD and make up a drawing that shows the geometry of this thing, so you guys know, what's too big and what won't fit in here. So most ESCs will fit, because this is a really big micro ESC and it fits. Just barely, but it fits. Alright, so be looking for that to show up on the product page for this upgrade.
Alright guys, we got our ESC all soldered up nice and pretty. You do want to route your wires around, make sure nothing's being pinched or cut or in danger of. The next step is you're going to be sealing your skirt to your sink. It's all multiple steps in the waterproofing. It's not all like, I'm just going to waterproof this all the way at the end. If you built your entire quad and you decide that you're going to waterproof it at the end, you're going to have a hard time. So this is why I've been kind of waterproofing as I go. And while I waited on these screws to dry up that I had sealed earlier on, I also went and hit some of these holes that I know I'm not going to need. Neil added a bunch of extra ports for extra accessories if you decide to use them, like GPS or diversity antennas and whatnot. So you do want to seal up a few of these, and if you want, I'll go slow, that way you can see what I sealed up. This one is for your camera, so I sealed up this side. These two are going to be for your power leads. You'll seal those up once you get it all built. In the back, This is for your crossfire to stick out to. So I sealed up the other one. And this one is going to be for your antenna. And you can see there's 3 holes on this side. So your antenna for your UFL to SMA is going to go out of here. Most of you guys did get this extension. So I would suggest sealing the top one and this side. But I said you can build it up any way you want and see what works for you. But this is what kind of worked for me. So I went ahead and just sealed them up. They're already dry, so I don't have to mess around while I'm trying to push it in and getting silicone all over my hands. To seal up the heat sink to this, it doesn't require much. This is already pretty watertight as it is. It has a lip inside, as you can see. It catches your fingernail right there. So what you want to do is get you some of this hairy Gorilla silicone, whatever color you want. If you want pink or clear, you can use either. And just put some on your finger and just kind of, or just put a little nice bead around and just kind of like put it in all the way around. And then run your wires through. You probably want to do that first. Run your wires through this hole, and then you'll be able to seat it in. And if you want to let it dry, you can let it dry, or you can continue, move it to the side and start working on your flight controller, because you needed a lot of work for that. See, this way I use a conformal
Because it's messy.
yeah. She's all sealed up. Alright, so once you put a bead of silicone around your skirt, you've pressed it down. Well, before you do that, you want to make sure that this little notch right here, it's facing towards the front where the camera goes, because this is where your cameras kind of come out to. If it's facing this way and you've already pressed it in and it's sealed, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to take it off, and you're going to make a mess. So please make sure that this is sticking out this way. And also, it's going to give you the 2 open ports that I mentioned to leave open for your XT60 mounted, that goes mounted right there. Alright, as you can see here, I'm starting to work on the power leads. You know, like, it does look cramped in here, but there's actually plenty of room for you to leave extra wire and excess to give you some slack if you need to work with it. I did find that routing that's why I told you guys to point your power leads up, because that way you can route them around like so, and then that'll solder up into your XT60 very nicely. And the flight controller is going to just kind of drop in there. You can push these down once you're all done. You know, there's no snagging or any interference with it. If you try to run your power cables to the back, then this is going to get pushed out, and it's going to break your seal on the top. So this is the only reason why we went around. You know, it looks silly, you know, having one short and one long, but it is what it is. All right, once you got it all solder up, you're gonna want to mount your little waterproof receiver box. That one goes mounted back here, and you'll see there's a little standoff area. So that's gonna go just like so. And it's gonna use some self-tapping screws that will go to the bottom, and you mount it up. But before you do that, we have provided these brass press-in nuts that you need to press into here. Most people are just gonna grab some pliers and, you know, hulk them in there. But I did find a pretty easy way to do it. Just kind of put one in there, like so. Oh, go in there. Oh, and grab your solder iron, like so. And you just go all the way around. So we knew that. It melts the plastic around, and it actually helps. I don't know if you can see. Hold up. Helps to grab on those little grooves that it's on there. If you were just to press it in with some pliers, it just kind of like crushes everything. So I found this to be pretty neat way to do it. Do one more for you. Ta-da! Alright guys, so we're getting pretty close to our final steps here on the build. I went ahead and did some prep work while you guys were away, having a snack. So pretty much after you seal up your skirt around, all you got to do is just work on your electronics outside of the drone, your flight controller mainly. This is a little thing I did. This is your cable for the flight control, the crossfire. I shrink wrapped it and ran it through because it's much easier to seal around a single strand versus 4 little strands. So that's up to you if you want to do it, or you can seal up the 4 wires if you want, or shrink wrap it as you go. So crossfire wire will go through the skirt here, and you will have to seal from here and from the inside. Once you pull it out to this side, it's going to go to this port, which you'll have to also seal, and seal on the inside with silicone. And your crossfire antenna will go into one of these ports, whichever one you want, and then seal them both up. You don't need to put silicone on this edge because you do get the waterproof gasket to go with your carbon fiber lid. So that part is done. You will need a USB extender. This is not included in the kit. You can find these on Amazon. You can ask me on Facebook to give you a link if you want. But
we also sell them.
Okay, and he also sells them as well. I didn't know that. But yes, you will need to do an extender, or because I really don't think you want to be opening up and unsealing your canopy or the pod once it's all put together. So do your little extender, shrink wrap it, seal it around right here, right there, and then you just gotta mount it right in between those 2 holes, which if you're using the GoPro camera mount that goes right here, it'll go in between the 2 little press nuts, kind of pointing towards the front like this, so you're not bumping against the motor as you're plugging it in. Once you get all this done, you're going to be sealing up the Vista, which is the last step. But before you seal it, you want to activate it, update it, and bind it. There's actually no easier way to rebind to it without opening your whole pod. So you want to do that before you seal it up. I did mount stick this thermal tape. It's very thin. It's like paper thin. It's I don't know where you can find it, Neil.
Get it on Amazon.
Okay. So yeah, thermal tape on here, so it absorbs all the heat and passes it onto the little fins. And just pretty much want to mount it on there. You do want to poke some holes on the little screw holes. You can do that with some needle nose or whatever you have in hand. And once you got it all done, you're going to put your Vista on here. The screws go in through here, and then the little nuts will go into the top. You want to put a little dab of silicone on these holes right here just in case. Now the Vista camera, or the Vista camera, it's not waterproof. It does have glue here, so that is waterproof. But of course it does have cracks around, so what we recommend is for you to take these 2 screws out and put a bead of silicone around. You're just going to take off the 2 screws and you're just going to gently pry it open. I'll be tugging at it, and then just put some silicone in there all the way around. You know, don't take much. You can do the whole thing if you want. You know, happy little trees. Now as far as the front, I don't recommend you taking that off because it said the sensor is there. What you can do is you can just put silicone around, or get some kind of waterproof tape to seal that edge. It ain't going to be pretty, but it'll keep the water out. Hardly any water is going to get in there regardless, unless you go swimming with this thing, which is not recommended. But yeah, just put a little bead of silicone on there. and then wipe it down with your finger, and whatever excess got in there, that should be plenty. And that's it, guys. Just put your screws back on, wipe it down, and ready to go.
Okay.
Alright, guys, so this is the final shot of it, all sealed up. As you can see, we sealed up the receiver box. It's got 4 little screws right there. The grommet is inside already. This is your pod, fully assembled, fully sealed. Every little hole has the silicone on it. I still got to touch that one up. But I'm going to show you how to open it. So you don't want to seal it right away as soon as you're already done, just in case something goes wrong. But pretty much you're going to press in right here in the middle, and you'll get a little gap right there, and then just pop it out. If you try to pry it open without pushing in, you're going to have a hell of a time. So this is what it looks like from the inside, nice and neat. That's it.
Sweet. Alright guys, I'm going to discuss some final steps. I have a completed system here, and what you're going to want to do is take these little self-tapping screws. These are number 2 by 5/16, I think. These will come in your waterproof or all-weather upgrade kit, and what you want to do is install them into these holes. There's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what this is going to do is it's going to grab into the skirt. Okay, and so when you need to take this bottom plate off and open up the enclosure, it's going to ensure that the skirt doesn't pop off the bottom. All right, so that's how that works. And additionally, what you want to do is install these screws here that join the bottom plate onto this heat sink. Okay, and obviously there's 4 of them. They're M2 screws. Guys who built this yourself, and you've just opted to use this little remote USB, what you're going to need to do, I believe, if you feel you're going to be flying through some snow or rain or mist or something like that, is to go ahead and take a piece of tape or something sticky and just cover up this USB port so you don't get water in there. Now, of course, you don't have to worry about that if you've opted to just set up your flight controller and not use this, and then of course then you don't need to worry about it. But that is just a little bit of insurance for you if you're flying in the wet. This portion of the video is for customers who have purchased a Whoopmaster 4-inch all-weather version as a bind and fly. Okay, so you're not building it yourself. You paid us to do it. Now you've got it, and what the hell do you do? Okay, so I'm going to explain this for you guys, because you're going to need to get into this thing and bind to the video system and then also the receiver, assuming you have a separate receiver like Crossfire or something. Some of you guys are going to be running DJI, but regardless, you're going to have to bind to the DJI system. So what you want to do is flip it over, and there are a set of 8 screws. You're going to remove those. I went ahead and uninstalled or took out all of the 8 screws here. So now we can get into the interior of the enclosure. So what you want to do is just take your finger and sort of press like this, and then that will allow you to grab in here and pop this open. All right, and you can see we've left the wires long enough such that you can sort of move this around, and then you can access the bind button on the Vista. All right, so there's the bind button. So you can put power through it, bind to your Vista, and you'll be good to go there. So now that you've got, let's say that you've got a version of our bind and fly that has this little receiver box. Okay, well, you got to bind to the receiver, so you can open up this receiver box. So we'll do that now. Okay, so then we can take off this plate here. All right, and you'll notice that there is a gasket I'm going to go ahead and pull it out so you guys can see it. Well, it's stuck pretty good in there, so I'm not going to pull it out. Leave yours in there. Don't try and pull it out like I did. But anyways, this is a TPU gasket. So make sure if you pull this off that your gasket hasn't come off somehow and is not sitting in its little slot. Now you can do this as many times as you want. Okay, this particular box is designed that you can take the lid on and off. So you're going to want to bind to the receiver, and then after you've bound to the receiver, just put your top plate back on, your lid, and then screw these down all the way until they stop. All right, and then once you've bound to the Vista here, then you can put this back on, screw it all back down like it was. Now, what I suggest is when you go, after you've bound and you go to put this back on, is you'll notice that this wire running from the Vista to the camera sits in this little slot right here. Okay, it sits in that slot, right? So what you want to do is take some silicone and sort of take your finger and just run it around this perimeter all the way around that lip right there, and then also make sure that you stick this down in here and put some silicone here. Then you can take and stick this back on, and it will pop back into place. Watch. You see that? Okay, and that silicone is going to is a little bit of insurance to make sure that you don't get water ingress into the enclosure. So that is pretty much it. Now you've got access to the flight controller from this. This is a remote extension for the USB access to the flight controller, so you can set up your flight controller, your rates, whatever you want to do in there. Now, one thing I want to mention is this is open. You see that this is open right now. So it could be possible that water gets in here. That might be bad. So if you suspect that you might be going into an environment where you're going to be getting this wet, maybe you could take some tape, like some electrical tape, and or some really sticky tape or something, and just kind of cover this up, cover this opening up, and I think that'll be just fine. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to email us at support@catalystmachineworks.com or info@catalystmachineworks.com.